Oh man. High Elves, Dark Elves, Lizardmen, and Skaven confirmed, boys. It's Total War Warhammer 2, and it's coming in 2017. My apologies to the historical fans. I am also eagerly awaiting more news of the historical Total War, but Creative Assembly made it very clear on Reddit and Total War forums, and even in their teasers, that this announcement would be for Warhammer. CA does have a completely separate and big development team working on the next historical game, but it just started full production, so it's going to be another year or two before we get it. There's a lot to cover in terms of information, so I'm going to jump into the Q&A Creative Assembly posted to get the frequently asked questions about Total War Warhammer 2 out of the way, and then we can talk about what all this means. Before we do that, I do want to take a second to stroke my dick a little bit and say Sotek and myself did a pretty damn good job predicting how Game 2 would shake out. Obviously, there's still a lot that we don't know, but the speculation video we did a month ago was pretty on point. I guess a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. So the Q&A should be very beneficial in answering some of your guys' questions, so let's do that first. What is Total War Warhammer 2? Warhammer 2 brings players a breathtaking new narrative campaign set across the vast continents of Lustria, Ulthuan, Nagaroth, and the Southlands. The Great Vortex campaign culminates in a definitive and climactic endgame, an experience unlike any other Total War title to date, and will be a separate narrative campaign from the base game. So the Southlands is a very interesting choice. This is the area to the east and south of Nehekara, the land of the dead, where the Tomb Kings reside. And this is very likely where at least one Skaven subfaction will be. Clan Pestilence can definitely be in Lustria, but their home base is technically in the Southlands, since Sotek kicked their collective asses off the continent. So they might be fighting Lizardmen subfactions for control of that jungle. With that said, I definitely expect to see playable Skaven subfactions in Lustria as well. As for the Southlands, some people are taking this to mean Tomb Kings might be coming early as DLC. I actually don't. There are 8 major Warhammer races left. If the Tomb Kings are added in Game 2, then CA is only going to be left with the Ogre Kingdoms, the Chaos Dwarfs, and the Demons of Chaos in Game 3, which just makes it a harder game to sell. An entire revamp of the Warriors of Chaos alongside a host of God-aligned subfactions could work, and if the Tomb Kings do come in Game 2, it's virtually guaranteed the Chaos content in Game 3 will be incredibly well fleshed out, which is frankly very needed considering the state of the Warriors of Chaos right now, but I do think Game 3 is a harder sell if the Tomb Kings aren't there, so I'm interested to see how Creative Assembly decides to handle it. How many races or lords can we expect? Well, there are 4 playable races, each with 2 legendary lords for a total of 8 individual start positions. Big props to CA for continuing down that path. High Elves, Dark Elves, Lizardmen, and a 4th race, yet to be revealed, will all feature. Each race is unique and will feel very different to play. Each has unique and iconic battlefield units, characters, monsters, war machines, and tactical strengths on the battlefield. In campaign, each has its own suite of unique campaign mechanics built around its backstory and lore in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. In short, each race offers a very distinct way to play. So it seems though Lord Mazdamundi, Malekith the Witch King, Prince Tyrion, and Teclis, Warden of the White Tower, are confirmed as legendary lords, while Krotgar is extremely likely. Some people have been saying the old blood on the Carnosaur in the trailer is Krotgar. I don't believe it is. He doesn't have the Hand of the Gods in his left hand in the trailer, and his Carnosaur doesn't look like Grimlock to me, so I think it's just a generic Saurus old blood on a Carnosaur. Skaven are not technically confirmed yet, but they're at the end of the trailer, and CA has explicitly stated Game 2 will have 4 starting races. So beyond a shadow of a doubt, Skaven will be the 4th. They're just holding back on revealing them to build hype, because the Skaven are obviously extremely popular, and they want to spread reveals up until release. So what's up with the Vortex in the announcement trailer? The Great Vortex is a vast magical maelstrom that roils above the Isle of the Dead in the center of Ulthuan, home continent of the High Elves. The Vortex was forged in a past age by a convocation of High Elf mages to drain the winds of magic from the world and blast a huge demonic invasion back to the realm of chaos from whence it came. It is a prominent part of the Warhammer Fantasy Battles world, a unique feature on the Total War Warhammer campaign map, and lies at the heart of the main campaign. We actually got a look at Kalidor Dragon Tamer and the first binding of the Vortex in the trailer, which was a really nice touch by Creative Assembly. How is Total War Warhammer 2's campaign going to be different from the first game? As the twin-tailed comet of Sotek made its recent journey across the skies, it caused the Vortex to become dangerously unstable, and each of the 4 races has its own objective regarding this. Some wish to heal the Great Vortex and prevent calamity, like the High Elves and the Lizardmen, and others see opportunity in disrupting it, like Malekith the Witch King and the Dark Elves. That said, no 2 races have precisely the same objectives, and they'll need to accomplish them in their own way. The campaign is therefore a race for control of the Vortex, culminating in a cataclysmic series of endgame events. This is the first Total War game where the AI can beat you to the endgame objective. But the race for the Vortex isn't the be-all and end-all. You will still have to build and manage your empire, treat with and betray your allies, research tech, develop settlements, all the usual Total War good stuff, with unique race mechanics and objectives defining the specifics of your campaign. You still need to further your aims and build your empire, but there will also be a greater focus on confounding or supporting the other races in theirs. How big is the Total War Warhammer 2 campaign map? The Vortex campaign is roughly the same physical size as the first game, but there are approximately 33% more conquerable land regions in the Warhammer 2 campaign map as opposed to the Warhammer 1 campaign map. These are spread across 4 continents, separated by perilous seas. What other new features can I expect? There's a host of new gameplay features, some of which are tied to the specific narrative of the Vortex campaign, and some which will apply to the huge combined map, which I'll talk about in a second, but they'll be detailing that over the coming months. Do I need the original game to play Total War Warhammer 2? No, you do not need the first game in the trilogy in order to play Warhammer 2. However, if you do own the first game, as well as the second game, you'll be able to choose to play on a huge new combined campaign map. So owners of both games will have 3 large and different campaign maps to choose from. So what do I get if I own both Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2? If you own both games, you get 3 huge campaign maps, the original one featuring the old world, a new one featuring the new world and the Vortex, and a combined campaign map featuring both of those areas joined together. If you own any DLC or free LC for Warhammer 1, like the Chaos Warriors, Wood Elves, Beastmen, Lord Packs, any of that stuff, you'll also still have access to their unique narrative campaigns, and will be able to play as those races in both the Old World campaign and the new combined campaign. So if you were worried about that at all, that is the first truly official announcement. Yes, CA has said before it was their plan to do this all along, but now it is truly official. They are combining all 3 games, and Game 1 and Game 2 will also combine, so you can put those fears to rest if you still had them. For owners of both the first and second game, the first content released shortly after launch will be a vast combined campaign map representing the geographical areas of both games in a single map. This will allow you to start epic campaigns as any owned race, including any of the DLC races that you own, and that will be available shortly after launch within a few weeks, not months, and will be the very first content drop. So why can't the combined campaign map be available right at launch? The Vortex campaign, with its dedicated narrative, unique features, mechanics, and flavor, is a big project in its own right. The combined campaign will be really big. I mean, if you think about it, it's literally including South America, Ulthuan, which is Atlantis, but kind of, it's close to North America, and then all of North America, and then all of the Old World, which is Europe, and parts of Asia, and then parts of Africa as well, which is where the Southlands are. So it is going to be a gigantic campaign map, lots of stuff going into it, lots of playable races, so I can understand why they want to take a little bit longer to make sure it's fleshed out and working well. They're going to be playtesting and balancing it for a bit longer, and so they just want to make sure they get it all right. So that will be available a couple weeks after launch, if what they say is true. Other stuff. Is naval combat happening? Only in auto-resolve. Warhammer Fantasy Battles is principally a game about land warfare, so that's where they're choosing to focus their efforts in terms of full battle simulation. There are some new sea-related campaign features that they're going to be detailing, but that's pretty much what I figured, right? It just would have been way too much work to create fully fleshed out naval rosters for all 16 major Warhammer Fantasy Battle races when the land armies are already so diverse in terms of animation and playstyle. I would love to see naval combat at some point, don't get me wrong, but I definitely was not expecting to see it in Game 2. CA already has so much on their plate dealing with the land rosters, and that's traditionally where most of their efforts go to. So as awesome as naval combat could be in Warhammer, I think they need to make sure they get the army rosters of each land race correct before they worry about naval combat. And that's pretty much what we said in a speculation video about a month ago. We said naval combat and striking a balance between that and land battles would be super difficult, and it looks like CA is going to go the land battle route, which honestly, even though it's less content, I think that it means that they can focus better on the core gameplay and the core army rosters, which is really important for Warhammer Fantasy. So what are CA's plans for multiplayer? Each of the races in Total War Warhammer 2 will be playable in single and multiplayer campaign, plus custom and multiplayer battles, as the 2 legendary lords for each race all have their own unique campaign start positions. You will also be able to play a 2-player co-op campaign with the other legendary lord from that same race on launch, which is really nice. That was something we were requesting at the launch of the first game, and I'm glad just from the beginning, from the outset, we're going to be getting that in Game 2. If you own both parts 1 and 2, you'll also be able to play multiplayer as any of the races that you own. It would have been absolutely crazy, and I would have freaked out. Like, I would have literally been super upset if Creative Assembly had split Game 1 and Game 2 in terms of multiplayer. I didn't expect them to do it. Very glad they're not going to be doing that. So that means if we want to play as the Empire versus the Lizardmen, you can do that in multiplayer. If you want to play as the Dwarfs versus the High Elves, you can do that. You could start a head-to-head campaign between the Dwarfs of the Karazak and the High Elves of Ulthuan and reenact the War of Vengeance. So there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff we can do with that. The awesome thing about having 16 major playable races is there's so much lore behind Warhammer Fantasy and so many historical battles and wars that you can recreate in head-to-head multiplayer campaigns or in multiplayer battles. They're just going to make for a really, really epic experience. It has been confirmed there will be a pre-order DLC and Collector's Edition bonus, although they're calling it an early adopter bonus just as kind of marketing speak, because obviously the word pre-order has very negative connotations associated with it nowadays. But early adopter bonus is a bit different. It means we will probably get the same deal we got with the Warriors of Chaos in terms of being able to acquire the pre-order bonus up to a week or two after launch of the game, which I think is very fair. You have more than enough time to read reviews and watch early access gameplay at that point. Make sure that it's not riddled with bugs before you purchase. So I don't think that it's particularly anti-consumer, although I understand why some people still don't like the idea. As I've stated, I don't think a major Warhammer race will be included as pre-order DLC. I guess the Tomb Kings are possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. A sub-faction or minor faction would still be enticing, but would at least partially avoid, if not completely avoid, all the craziness of the Warriors of Chaos backlash. So Talea, Astalia, the Dogs of War, the Vampire Coast, or a sub-faction of one of the existing races, possibly a Lizardmen sub-faction in the Southlands or Clan Pestilence in Lustria, being made playable would make a lot of sense. When is the release date going to be? It's going to be later in 2017. We don't know when yet. Quarter 3 or quarter 4 obviously make a lot of sense. It's not going to be a month or two from now. I sincerely doubt, although that would be amazing. But yeah, it's probably going to be, my guess in the video that I did a month ago, I think was around November, something like that. I think that seems pretty logical, but we'll see soon enough. As long as CA doesn't rush it, it's going to be awesome, and it's coming out in 2017. Very excited about that. Will there be modding support from release? As with Warhammer 1, modding will use the assembly kit and the Steam Workshop support, and those will both be available shortly after launch. Will it be released on Mac and Linux from release? Plans for Mac and Linux versions will be announced later in the year, which means hell no. It's not going to be coming on launch, I don't think. I don't even know if it's come out on Mac. The first game has come out on Mac yet. I don't think it has. Although Creative Assembly is not in charge of the port to Mac. It's a third-party company that's doing that port. So I don't have a lot of news on that. Unfortunately, if you're a Mac guy, I don't know what to tell you about Total War Warhammer or Total War Warhammer 2. Hopefully it comes out soon for you guys. Would love for you guys to be able to play the game, and maybe even, I don't know if there's cross-platform support between Mac and PC. That would be pretty cool. So, impressions from the trailer. Mazdamundi, the preeminent living Slann in the Warhammer world, finally got a model, and he looks dope as hell. He looks awesome right now. Actually, he looks a lot more reptilian than the tabletop versions of the Slann, which are more amphibian and frog-like in appearance, although I guess you can make the argument that he does look kind of toad-like here, but definitely a different style than the tabletop, which I like. He looks badass. Little rat at the end covered in bubonic plague is without question, it's at the end of the trailer, it's without question the Skaven. I mean, that could not be more obvious, which means Game 2 is almost infinitely more appealing to me than Game 1 was in terms of playable races. Pretty much all of my favorite Warhammer races besides the Tomb Kings are confirmed in Game 2 now, from a playstyle perspective, from an army roster perspective, everything. I just like the races in Game 2 a lot more than the ones in Game 1, which is not to say I don't like the races in Game 1, but the Skaven and Lizardmen especially are just so in your face and over the top, so Warhammer, that I think it's hard not to get excited for them, and I'm definitely more excited about this lineup than I was about the lineup in Game 1. The Witch Elves, or the Brides of Cain, look amazing, and it was incredibly satisfying to watch them get torn up by that Carnosaur. Teclis looked as arrogant and powerful as I would have expected, and Malekith looked absolutely terrifying in his Armor of Midnight. I'm really liking the direction CA is heading with the game. I think they're making a lot of the right choices. Obviously, there are issues that I would like to be sorted out, although they're more topics of debate and not outright things that everyone agrees with, but certainly there are some topics that a lot of people agree with. Warriors of Chaos need to be revamped in terms of their playstyle, their campaign, and their unit roster. They've definitely been left behind in the dirt a little bit here. Kind of screwed over by the whole pre-order DLC debacle and the fact that CA doesn't want to do DLC for DLC, which I understand, but it has left them in the dust. Sieges need some serious help in terms of being made more fun, getting revamped to be made more fun in my opinion. I think the custom siege maps are infinitely more entertaining in multiplayer than the vanilla maps, and a lot of the original Legendary Lords from Game 1 need buffs and changes to their campaign gameplay to be made more unique and entertaining, which is something I've obviously talked about before. Kemmler, getting Krell, and just a lot of these caster lords being made more viable and more entertaining in a campaign setting. With all that said, I'm going to leave you with some footage directly from the live stream, which will give you some more ideas about what we can expect from Game 2. There's a lot of really cool content in that live stream. I think a lot of people probably missed it, and I'm not sure if it's been archived. So here it is. Hope you guys enjoy this video from Creative Assembly. Love the work that they're doing over there in Horsham, England. They're doing some fantastic work in bringing the Warhammer Fantasy Universe to life, and I just want to thank them again for all their awesome work thus far. And hopefully they can fix some of the issues with Game 1 and continue strong into Game 2 and deliver the best Total War title to date. I am very much looking forward to it. Hope you guys are as well. Leave you with the video, and I'm signing out. See you next time.
Total War Warhammer 2 is the second game in the trilogy, and it's building off the successes of Total War Warhammer 1. We look at the whole new area of landmass to the west, and we explore the races therein, so High Elves, Lizardmen and Dark Elves. We got some very, very positive feedback from our decision to sort of really try and make the races play differently. So we've embraced that throughout the DLC for Warhammer 1, and we're doing even more for Warhammer 2.
So the typical process of getting a character to animation actually is quite long. So we start with a concept art of what the character will look like. That then gets modelled with all the polygons, and then my job is putting the movement and personality into that character. The elves have been an interesting challenge in itself because they are all humanoid units, so we have this extra challenge of how do we make them each feel and look different. Lizardmen has been a completely different experience than any other race so far. We tried doing mocap for them, and we found that they were pushing too far into the human side, so we went much more animalistic.
The Lizardmen have these incredible glittering scaled armies of reptiles which start right down with your basic unit, which is the skink. And then you have the Saurus, who are much more powerful, sort of 8 feet of hulking reptilian muscle. And then you have more specialised units, so you have things like the pterodons, which are sort of flying units. You have carnosaurs, which are essentially T-Rexes that are occasionally tamed by the Lizardmen for battle, and stegodons, which act as mounts, and bastillodons as well, which are often outfitted with an array of sort of magical artillery. So on the battle side, we're looking to introduce more variety in Total War Warhammer 2, and one of the ways we're doing this is by examining sort of different and sometimes wilder new terrain types.
You've got very lush jungle, very beautiful but also very dangerous, deserts with all the hazards that that entails, and all kinds of other environments. So it's really looking to get the flavour the Games Workshop have created in their fantasy setting into our game. So the key locations are Ulthuan, the home of the High Elves, Naggaroth, the home of the Dark Elves, Lustra, a jungle region, and the Southlands, which is a mixture of desert, jungle and other environments.
Bringing a fantasy location to life is pretty challenging. There's not much concept out for the landscapes, so we have to read through all the lore books and decipher all the text and make something awesomely crazy with it afterwards. For the Lizardmen, we have these big, heavy stone structures, but parts of them are floating by magic. For the Dark Elves, one of the key elements are the Black Spine Mountains, and they're surrounded by a large expanse of hardened lava, probably the most diverse area of the map that we've ever had.
So the Great Vortex, which hovers above Ulthuan, is absolutely integral to the storyline of Warhammer 2. Now the Vortex was forged in millennia past. There was a great chaos invasion called the Great Cataclysm. The Lizardmen, as the first and most ancient race, were the first to fight chaos. And they only just held on, but it was actually the High Elves who forged the Great Vortex and managed to sort of preserve the equilibrium of the world.
You can ignore the storyline, the narrative. You don't have to fight for the Vortex if you don't want. Sandbox gameplay is sacrosanct to Total War.
The player can go in any direction they want, and that's going to be enhanced this time because players can now conquer any territory they want.
We have 2 legendary lords per race, each with their own start position. You can play co-op multiplayer with the same race, and that creates all sorts of possibilities, and it's something the fans have been asking for. What we want people to feel at the end of Warhammer 2 is that I want them to feel they've had an incredible gameplay experience, which is fundamentally Total War and fundamentally Warhammer, but at the same time interesting, new, different and exciting right to the end.